How's it going, everybody? I just wanted to kind of go over what you can expect during void meditation and how to deal with each little piece of it. So, as you begin to get into the void meditation, it takes a while before you get fairly good at it. You begin to notice different levels of thought, and so these are kind of the levels of thought that you want to tackle in order. Okay, so your first level of thought is full-on, involved thought. That's when you're thinking of a thought, you're involved in it, you're pretty much completely immersed in the thought and dealing with whatever that thought is. So when you're practicing the void meditation, that's the first kind of level of thought that you want to work with and make sure you're not getting wrapped up in. So as the thought comes along, you pretty much avoid the temptation or ignore the temptation of wrapping up in the thought, of getting involved in it, paying attention to it, dissecting it, getting more and more into pieces of the thought. So that alone can take, for me, took about a month, from 2 weeks to a month, before I was able to completely go 10 minutes of meditation without fully getting wrapped up in a thought. The second level that you're going to notice is there's these kind of pre-thought seeds. So you'll have a thought or a representation of a thought come to mind. So if you're stressed out at work, you'll immediately have a visualization or an impression of that thing at work that's stressing you out. Or if you're having if you have whatever, if you're concerned about your health and you want to start eating right, you'll have a thought of maybe a bowl of fruit and vegetables. Just kind of little pre-thought flashes that develop into full thoughts. Taking care of these takes a little bit longer. Again, you're looking at a month to a month and a half before you can fully go through 10 minutes of void meditation without having these sudden thoughts come into your mind. They tend to sneak in, so I think that's why they're a little bit tougher. They just pop in there, and you have to kind of watch for them or where they're coming from. You have to kind of keep an eye out for how they form and condense and are presented to your conscious awareness. So it definitely takes a little bit of practice to get used to it, but you can do it. It's more or less just practice. I mean, just getting it done, doing it every day, and getting involved with the process. So that's the second level of thought. It's more really just a thought seed. It's you're still probably looking at visual, sensory, auditory, sometimes textual or the sense of taste will be involved in these pre-thought seeds. Now, once you get past that, there's an unusual, let's see. Okay, so there are some thoughts that tend to be kind of almost kind of like stealth thoughts. They'll sneak in, they'll be there, and they'll take up processing time in your mind without you really realizing what happened until after it happened, and then you'll realize, I just had a thought. But you don't know really where it came from or how much of your mind was involved in it. You'll just have this kind of recollection of having a thought taking up some sort of time and space in your mind at some point, and you're not quite sure about it. I am not sure what these are or exactly how they come about, but I do know that the more you conquer the thought seeds, the more they will dissolve and they'll become less and less frequent. So just taking care of the normal thought seeds will eventually take care of the stealth thoughts. And then the final level of thought is thought vibration, and that's the only way I can really explain it. It's kind of like a preemptive emotional construct of, it's a very specific emotional vibration that carries with it all the encoded information to develop into a thought seed. That's the only way I can really describe it. If you were to pretend like your thought space is kind of this area around your head, and you invite thoughts in, and you'll have them in your thought space, and you'll entertain them and work with them. When you get rid of them, you'll have this kind of membrane that separates your conscious space from what is outside of that, whatever that is, whatever that happens to be. Now, a seed thought is kind of like a burst from the membrane into your thought space of a picture or an image or a sound, and that's what a seed thought is. But where that comes from in the membrane is what I'm talking about. It's kind of this right on the border of your consciousness, between your consciousness and your subconscious mind. There's kind of this membrane, and it will actually have this, I mean, you'll get a sense of what I'm talking about. But there's this vibratory nature to it, where you'll have a very specific vibration that is indicative of a very specific thought. And once that is introduced into your thought space, it will develop into a thought seed, and then you entertain it, and it becomes a full-fledged thought. So that's the last step of really mastering the void meditation, is being aware of these pre-thought vibrations. They're very strange little creatures to be aware of, but once you get the hang of it, and once you can calm that membrane, it becomes very, very tranquil. Now, once you're to that space where you can do a full 10 minutes without having a thought or a thought seed or thought vibration interrupt your meditation, it's a very sensual experience. Your senses become very, they become heightened. You're aware of every square inch of your skin, of your body. You're aware of, everything, how it all feels. One thing to be aware of is that having a thought is not the same thing as being aware of, of being aware of a sound, or a flash of light, or how you feel. It's a completely different thing, and that's kind of a separation that you'll get to understand at some point. But when you get to that point, when you can just have a completely thoughtless and thought vibrationless 10-minute meditation, you'll then begin to, you'll then want to begin to try to disassociate your mind from your sensual experiences, your auditory input, your visual input, and your sensational input. That's about where I am. I'm having a fairly difficult time with it, but it's getting a little bit easier. But anyway, that's the void meditation. When you get to that space, it changes how aware you are of what's going around. There's this kind of sense of this point within that is you, and it never changes. So no matter how angry you are, or how things going on in your mind, the different distractions, the different anxieties, or even feeling peace or whatever, there's always a sense of this point within that never changes. And that's kind of an interesting point, because you can always settle back on it and focus on it and bring yourself back to feeling somewhat collected. But yeah, that's just kind of what I've noticed so far with the void meditation, and what I've discovered with that. Also, because your body and your sensual input is not the same thing as having a thought, in the beginning you can actually use that to keep from having to focus on a thought. So imagine it this way: you have your thought space, and then you have your body as a separate thing. You know, you have the input coming in, and it's totally separate from actually letting something into your thought space and entertaining it. Now, separate from both of these is your point of focus. You can choose to focus on a thought. You can choose to focus on a thought vibration. You can choose to focus on, you know, thought seeds. There's all sorts of different things you can focus on. You can also focus on sensual input. So, while you're trying to eliminate the thoughts, a good method is to focus on sensual input. So, often I will throw my focus out there, and I will solely focus on. You'll hear a lot of meditation practitioners say focus on your breathing. That's one of the reasons why, because that helps diminish the amount of thought that you have. It helps you cut down on your thoughts because you're focused on your breathing. Your thoughts tend to, even if they're seed thoughts or whatever, they just tend to come and go or leave you alone completely because your focus is somewhere else. So one thing that I've noticed though is that if you move your focus around on things that are not within your thought space, it's fairly easy to keep a completely empty thought space. So, for instance, what I would do is I would focus on just kind of my visual field, the blackness behind my eyelids, and I would visually split my focus and bring it around to the back of my head, to the blackness, the visual blackness behind your head, and then I would drop down into my body and feel my entire body for a minute and just focus on how the feeling of the body is, and then I would focus on the hum of the ears, just that high-pitched sound of silence. I just focus on that for a second, and then I go back to focusing on my visual field, bring it back around to the back of the head, and drop back down to the body. After a while, after using that crutch to eliminate the thought and the thought vibrations and all of that, you'll notice it's much easier to keep your focus in your thought space without having any thought in your thought space. That's actually the kind of the point you want to get to, because that's a point where you can start to slip into completely thoughtless void meditation, where you feel like you're just free floating. You're still aware of your body, but you're in this kind of thoughtless, Zen zone. So what's beyond that, what I'm actually working on is cutting out my input. So I will actually pretend like my arm only exists to right here, or I'll start with a fingertip. I started with my fingertips. So I started with, pretending that a fingertip doesn't exist, and sooner or later, focusing on that sort of construction of your body, it will end up actually disappearing, and you will no longer be aware of your fingertip. Then you can go onto your hands, and it feels like you just have, arms with stubs without any hands, and you can continue to go up and up and up. And so the point with this is to get to the point where you can cut out your full sensual input. Once you're in a completely thoughtless space without any sensual input, visual, auditory, or tactile, then you are completely free-floating in nothingness. And I believe that's the point of void meditation, or the more advanced levels of void meditation, and the possibilities at that point I'm not sure of. However, it seems like it could be fairly intense and at the same time quite relaxing and peaceful. So that's my little bit of my 2 cents on the void meditation, and see you guys next video.